this is kind of how I see myself as a representational painter in 2018, is that I'm like a fan fiction writer. I feel like representational paintings right now, that's what, at least for me, is what we are doing. We're fans of representational painting, so we make, the fan
that's funny.
fiction
I like that.
kind of versions.
It's interesting.
Yeah. And that's why it's like, and I'm not saying it as a negative. I think that's just what we're doing. I'm intentionally referencing all the references that I'm referencing. Yeah. Like I put as many paintings that I'm referencing.
Right.
Hey, welcome to Waiting to Dry, the best art podcast this side of the Brooklyn Bridge. True facts, my guy. My name. That was for one. My name is Sergio Lopez.
I'm Josh Lawyer.
And we got Hiroshi Sato on the podcast today.
How was the pronunciation?
Oh, yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
It'll do. It'll do.
Yeah. We're good.
Thank you for doing this podcast.
No problem.
I know we did your
Adam
distant studio mate, Adam Caldwell, a while back, and he mentioned your art and a bunch of little things like how you like to critique your art really harshly.
Oh, yeah. I totally listened to that part and put it on repeat. And I was like, oh, yeah. Adam talking good stuff about me. I was just like, repeat.
Yeah, that's cool.
That's a pretty extreme form of critique, I would say.
Yeah, he said you gather them up and tell them they can't say anything nice.
Yeah, I mean, because, it's like talking about the good part is essentially because why are we there? We're there to critique, right? We're trying to make the work better. Right. And so to talk about the good stuff is essentially talking about things you don't actually need to change. So it will be more efficient if we're talking about things that don't work to make the work better. So that's why I was like, I get the formality and making it social in terms of talking about the good stuff and the bad stuff. But generally speaking, I do also think like most of the time the artists themselves already kind of know what's good because it's their own taste. And so you don't really actually need to spend a lot of time talking about it if you're looking for input to improve the work. So I thought, okay, let's just make it way more efficient, talk about the things that don't work and change those.
But what if, like people... I'm assuming you've had this before where you go to a show and someone will point out something that they love about it and that's the one thing you hate. And you're like...
Yeah. So, hate is a little... Or
not
strong.
Hate, but like that irks you or something like that, that like kind of annoys you about the painting. And you're like, that's the thing you like is the one thing that's annoying me. I don't know. I've had that before and I'm like, that's interesting because I don't know. What I'm trying to say is like sometimes could it be that someone likes something about your painting that would also like let you know something? I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah. There's totally interpretations that are unexpected. But that has nothing to do with good or bad. So it's like I actually don't, most of the time, I don't actually think about it in terms of good or bad. So if there's things like, even if we're saying that I don't like, we're talking about things that aren't working, which is a little bit different. And it's also something where it's like, most of my paintings, the part that I don't like is that it just seems not fully formed or not completed. So it's more like that painting just looks unfinished. And I just abandoned, that artist statement, I forgot who it was, but it was like, you don't finish a painting, you just abandon it.
Right.
And it's kind of exactly that, where it's like...
I think that was Kanye.
Maybe it was Kanye. I forgot who it was, but...
For sure.
Yeah, it's essentially that. And then the interpretation of a viewer it's that also another one-liner is like, once you put it out in the world, it's not yours thing.
Right.
So it's not that I don't care, but it's not really my job or area to care about what other people care.
Right.
When they see the painting, because it's actually its own thing. It's its self-contained presence.
Right.
So, after it's done, it's not mine in a lot of ways. And so if they see something that's not what I thought it was, it actually is interesting, but nothing to do with any bearing of like emotional parts of good or bad or happy or sad.
Right.
Yeah. Because there's a common interpretation with my painting where they say it looks like it's a picture that's been folded.
Right.
I actually like that interpretation a lot. I'm like, oh, that's really cool. But I had no intention about, or any inkling about that when I was starting out my stuff.
Right.
But I'm not going to be like, that's wrong. That's not my job.
Right.
Once it's out there. It's not, well, not job is not the right word, but it's more about, it's their freedom.
Right.
As an audience. And you have to respect that freedom.
Yeah. I mean, even to I almost like agree and disagree in a weird way. Because I do like, for instance, if someone writes a song based off of their life experience, right? Yeah. Like I might listen to that song and connect it to something. The only time I ever will push back on that if they say like, is this what you meant to do? Then I'll go like, no, I meant this different thing, but that's cool that you took your, because that's kind of what art ends up doing is like, it draws you to like this random place. So if someone goes like, oh, is this what you meant? I don't think they're wrong. I just think that's not why I created whatever I created. Right.
I mean, that's the big distinguishing part that they asked you. Right. They're asking you for what you thought.
Right.
Then it matters. Then of course, you're going to say what you were intending to do.
Yeah.
Because that's their interaction.
For sure.
Right? So that part's fine. And I think like they're asking because they're curious and they want to know more. Right? So in that effect, you should be, acknowledging that fact and actually entertaining that fact by actually being genuine about what your intention is as well.
Yeah, I totally agree.
It might not be the same or parallel, and that's completely fine. We're just expanding the picture.
Yeah. Usually I'll call them stupid and then and say, good try, loser.
Good try, loser.
No, get out of here.
You're not good enough, whatever. Blah.
Yeah. And then I look at the gallery and I go like, don't sell it to this person. This person only. Like anyone else wants to buy, feel free.
That's the fun.
Yeah.
I think.
I think so.
Yeah, I don't know. Interpretation, I mean, that's the whole postmodern thing, right? All interpretations are valid, audiences' interpretations, et cetera.
That's also like a belief you can subscribe to or not, right? Like, you don't have to, like, believe that. It's kind of like a built-in belief that it's a belief just like any other. So you could say, like, nah, I'm cool off of not agreeing with that. And, or do you think that's 100% true?
Well, it's going to exist whether you want it to or not.
Right. Yeah.
So it's not really about belief. An audience is going to interpret it, whether it's in their brain and they never tell you about it. They're going to interpret it that way.
Yeah.
So it has no bearing or control of belief or actions. It's their interpretation. And so, that's acknowledging that fact is fine, but whether you do something about it is a completely different matter. So how you feel about it is a completely different matter. And obviously we're talking about degrees because there could be interpretations where it's just like a complete misread where they're misreading it in bad faith. Then, I mean, most of the time people are going to be like, that's not good and they're not going to feel good.
Right.
But if it's an interpretation that's parallel or tangential to it or something like that, but it doesn't actually have any emotional attachments about good or whether the work is better or worse, then it's totally fine to me.
Right.
It doesn't really matter to me. Yeah.
But like, let's say if you had a clear intention and someone has their own belief of what this piece means, couldn't you easily have the belief that you can say, no, you're absolutely wrong. This is what the painting means, and also be very valid in your belief of clearing that. You know what I mean? Like, almost like,
I mean, all my work has a clear intention that I have and a clear, because I work in series. So each series has different concepts and ideas behind it. And like my intention is to convey that, but I don't intend to tell people what it is. Right.
But what I'm saying is, this is what I mean is like the belief that once you put art out there, that it's open for interpretation. What I'm saying is, if you don't subscribe to that, isn't that also kind of okay in a weird way? Like, couldn't you also, it's almost like couldn't two religions of art exist next to each other without having to prove the other one's wrong in a weird way? Like, couldn't you say, like, I have an intent, I want that intent to be known, and I don't care what the other people think the intent of the painting is? You know, like, you could go there. I'm not saying I am or anything. I'm just saying, like, I don't know. I was thinking about this recently about like the ideas that art, like these sayings artists have, like that. Yeah. And I was like, I wonder why, like, we all kind of just like subscribe to them. Why can't we just like there's almost like a fact to it, like a religious fact to it.
Well, it's a fact in the sense that it's a physical occurrence that happens. Right. And it's also, you know, we may say we don't care about other people's opinions, but we do care. Right. That's why we put it on a wall and let everybody see it. Right. And go, look at my painting. You know? So I don't actually buy the fact that people don't care.
Yeah, for sure. I totally agree with that.
We all do care. I do care.
I mean, at least being seen.
Yeah, and actually being interpreted by being seen.
Yeah. I think so. That's probably right.
And I think it's, if you want a person to see the painting in a specific way, it's actually the painter's job to make sure that there's enough devices in the painting to convey that clearly. And so it needs enough information and data in the painting to indicate that. Right? That intention. And so it's, if you could take it two ways. If they're interpreting it wrong, you could see that as you didn't actually do a good job of conveying that intention. Right. Which I think is a more self-critical way where you're actually trying to improve the painting. Or you could say, oh, they just interpreted it wrong. I don't care. Right. So, and this is where I go to is like, it's not about good or bad, or I'm thinking more about which is more productive. Which is more productive to making a better painting in the future, which is more productive to just making a better picture, you know? So that's the thing, is like, we can, you know, humans are narrative telling people. We make fictional stories. That's how we, you know, have our sense of self. Right. I'm so-and-so. I do this. I am this big or this small. I've been from here. I grew up here. Those are narratives. They're
Happily
fictions.
Ever Afters.
Yeah. And
that was a beautiful story, by the way.
In order to... I'm sure.
I almost cried. Not gonna lie.
Not gonna lie. Yeah. You know, it's all stories.
Yeah, for sure.
It's all fictional narratives.
Yeah.
But even though it's fiction, it's real. Right. And there's a difference there. And because we're making fiction narratives, we need to be self-aware of like how we're controlling that narrative, in the sense that, like, okay, if I'm going to make a painting with an intention that has a story, I need to make sure I'm conveying that story as best as I possibly can, right? I'm not saying be literal or like be obvious, but just have the technical skill to do it well, right? Whether it's subliminally or like obviously, optically, whatever. And if you're not doing it well, I think it's more productive to see it as, I should do a better job by accepting the interpretation of the viewer, and then being like, I could have done a better version of it. Because I do believe there's like many versions of the same picture that you could possibly make. Right. There is no one version which is the best version.
Except for yours. I'm just kidding.
Like what?
Yeah. Thank you.
Oh,
that was what your response was supposed to be.
Okay, sure. Yeah. So I don't know. It's kind of one of those. It's like cold, rational, practical way of interpreting it. Is I'll use it to improve my paintings rather than to disregard it so that I can keep doing what I'm doing. Which, you know, it goes either way. You could either continue to be doing well, or you could just be complacent in recreating your own habits. Right. Which, you know, I don't know. It depends on the interpretation of that too.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So have there been examples of people interpreting your work in a way? Because I think your work is pretty open to interpretation in a lot of different ways. So have there been times where somebody has said something about your work and it's made you change your approach for the next time, or even that same painting?
Not really. Honestly. Well, that would be a lie by the fact that you got this data input and it's in your input and you can't take it out of your head anymore because it's in there.
Well, now. I mean, you're not a robot, so you can like drink it away, just get drunk.
No, I mean, it probably is in a subliminal sense. It does affect you though.
Yeah, maybe.
It's not like you're consciously. There's a difference there, whether you're consciously acknowledging something or whether you're just thinking that you're not acknowledging it, but it's affecting you anyways, which is, you know, how humans respond with like defensiveness and all those things. But
for sure.
And yeah, so I do see like I want input back because you can start to gather more information, right, of how people are interpreting your work.
Right.
And it's actually good because you can see the variety of interpretation and see the patterns where it's consistent.
Right.
So like, oh, they're consistently talking about, like with my paintings, they're talking about how it feels quiet or calm. And it's consistent. So then I know that's like
I just thought the same thing when I was looking through your work.
Oh, yeah? That's good.
Yeah.
Because it is my intention.
Okay.
And but then it's like, oh, okay. It's a feedback where you're kind of getting the user kind of, you know, feedback where you're like, oh, okay. That part's working.
So have you gotten a critique, a harsh critique that helped you out?
Well, when I was in school, we did critiques. And I like it when people don't say good things because I do honestly think a lot of critiques become kind of a little bit of like just patting each other on the back when it just becomes talking about good stuff.
Right.
It's a weird circle jerk, you know? I'm like, oh, we're not doing anything. We're not critiquing.
Could you explain circle jerks to the listeners?
I'll just leave that up to people looking it up on Google.
Don't do that, kids. Nice, that's cool.
That's the thing. It's like, why are we here? We're here to critique. We're here to make the painting better. And so I always think about it in that sense, like the bigger goal of why we're there or why we're doing something, right? And so that's why it's like harsh critiques are actually productive. If they're, if they're just talking about not relevant parts, they're not even actually talking about the painting, then yeah, sure, you could like try and guide the conversation back to be like, well, let's try and talk about the painting.
Right.
you know, rather than some weird stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. So I don't know. I've never really been in like an environment where I get like critiqued constantly or regularly or whatever. So in that, do they dive into like, you know, you talked about storytelling earlier, like as an artist, not only technique, but would that come into the conversation? The skill of storytelling, I guess.
Right. I mean, okay,
as an artist.
we would have to preface this whole conversation with the fact that I'm just talking about representational painting.
Right, for sure.
That's what I'm doing. And so we're not talking about like a lot of other genres or styles or things like that about painting, right?
Right.
And in that in critiques, it's obviously dependent on the
because
quality.
You think those styles suck? Is that what you said?
No.
Oh, okay.
No.
I was just wondering.
It's just to be more specific.
Okay.
But when we're critiquing, it's dependent on the people there. So who's critiquing? You know, and usually it was your other students critiquing as well. And so it varies. It generally varies, I would say. And it varies on like the type of class you were taking for critiques. If you're taking a critique for like, I don't know, like a head painting class, you're going to be critiquing about how well you're painting the head.
Right.
You're not critiquing about narrative at all, right?
For sure.
Yeah. And in the academy's setup of like the class, right?
But was there ever like an environment where storytelling...
Oh, yeah. So we had like more, more advanced classes where you'd be talking about like making a body of work and stuff. And then it's all about intention. So, intention is the thing. It's like, okay, what were you trying to do? And then let's look at the work and see how well you're achieving what you're trying to do. That's where the critique is. It's not got to do with actually any technical or like, superficial parts. It's like, you're trying to do this. How are you doing it? And how well are you doing it?
That's interesting.
Yeah.
That'd
Which
be cool.
I think is actually a critique.
For sure. Yeah,
not talking about I like that blue color or not. That doesn't really have a bearing unless it's the topic is about blue that you're trying to convey or something, right? Mm-hmm. It doesn't. It's not relevant.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And especially if you go to like a school filled with Crips, they're all gonna love the blue. You know what I mean? It's just like a given.
So we're doing social references.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. I see.
That's cool. Have you ever had that experience?
A critique environment like that?
Yeah.
There was a lot of that in school, and we both went to the same school, Hiroshi and I. But
shout out to
the Academy of Art. Yeah, we had critiques, but we didn't get, at least in my classes, it was mostly all about technical aspects of like how well you're doing something or not. There were very few classes I took that had to do with critiquing the ideas and how well you're conveying them.
Yeah,
it'd be interesting to be like a fly on the wall in one of those classes, just because I'm interested in seeing how much would be dictated by like what you're actually trying to say. You know, like if someone's trying to be socially aware or something like that, that might be more loved than someone. I don't know. I'm just curious. It would be interesting to see.
Well, you're talking about like baggage and bias that are brought on by the viewer, right?
Right. Yeah.
Which is a part, but I think what we're talking about is like it's intention in the modern art sense. That's all it is. It doesn't really matter what you're doing.
Well, we were talking about like
intention,
like objective. Like I was kind of like you kind of going in with your perspective and judging something like a story. Like, would that get in your way of being able to like critique something based off of a story? You know what I mean? It's like almost like, if I'm not into this genre of book, can I enjoy it as much as someone else? And would my critique be valid? It would be, I'm just talking out loud, really, just kind of never being in that
that's how you use technical knowledge to critique something. So it might not be your genre of book that you like, but you can look at the structure of the story.
Right.
You can look at devices. Yeah. You can look at all those things that are technical to critique something.
So did it stay in that kind of realm when you were in that environment?
Well, try to, at least, because it's not that easy.
That's interesting.
Because it's not, we're all human. People will put whether they like something or not, or like these tangential things. So, and that you just kind of got to roll with it. It's kind of fun. That's part of the thing, so it's okay. Yeah, that too. Yeah.
That's cool. So did you enjoy that environment?
Yeah, I enjoy critiques.
Yeah.
I definitely do. It's just, there are better critiques than some others, obviously, depending on the person, depending on their knowledge of art, et cetera, et cetera. So you can't say like, critiques are good or bad. It depends on who's critiquing too. Yeah.
Like who was a bad critiquer? Just name them right now real quick.
Oh, I don't even remember. Talking about completely not relevant.
Jeff something.
John G or something.
Nice. So how long have you been out of school?
It's been 3 years.
Oh, nice.
3 years.
Now you're on the grind?
Yeah.
Nice. How have you been enjoying that?
Well, it's hard.
Your voice changed.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. Yeah, it's
I mean, you live in a very cheap city, so we got that going for you.
Right.
San Francisco,
yeah, that's the hard thing, It's like, I mean, I'm, like once again, it's always about the bigger picture. I know why I'm doing it, so all the problems are part of doing it.
Yeah.
So you got to accept it.
Yeah.
At least that's what I think.
Yeah, I think that's pretty spot on. It would be, you would never want to be a person who just rise to success off the bat. That would be probably the worst path you can take in a weird way. You hear about it all the time with successful people where they always reminisce about the grind.
Right.
Yeah. There's something special about that, about like figuring out how to survive. When you're comfortable, you just look for things to complain about, I think.
Mm-hmm. but I'd prefer that.
Yeah.
So if anyone's trying
Anybody saying that they would prefer the comfort over the grind, it's like, yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what most people would be. Is like, I would prefer to be successful.
Yeah.
Obviously. Right?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, and to that, even for like art, it's still a different spectrum than like celebrity or anything like that.
Yeah. I mean, it's subjective in like your bubble too.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And success kind of means like I can live pretty normal.
Yeah.
I can live like a normal human being.
Yeah, that's what I would be thinking is like my success isn't really about money, really.
Yeah.
It's more about being able to keep painting.
Yeah, I think so.
Good. That's good enough in
For
a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think so.
So, yeah, that's good. I mean, well, yeah, at the worst, you can always, I think, unless you like lose all body function, I think you'll.
Yeah, that's terrible, right? If you wanted to do painting.
You seem committed. I don't think you'll quit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think I have a choice. Yeah. I don't think it's a choice. So, yeah.
At least now, maybe if I bunked my head a long time ago.
But yeah, it's all with the fact that you never know what's going to happen, then you could die any day. So it's like you might as well be doing exactly what you really think should be happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So your art, I don't know how much you want to like even get specific with, but there is that like, I even saw the theory of the folded paper theory people have.
Oh yeah.
I was like, oh, that's interesting. I didn't even think about that, but it does make your mind wander for a bit. I think it's like, oh, that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, it adds like a dimension to it.
Yeah,
it's like there's more possibilities. Yeah, actually, it's not less possibilities.
Yeah, and folds are if someone's folding a piece of paper that much, there's probably some intention to it to develop something else. And I was like, that's interesting.
It's got a narrative to it,
Yeah.
Yeah. I really do like it. Yeah. It's not at all like what I had thought, it's not, I haven't actually included it into my intention at all either.
Of the origami, or not origami, but like the folding of things.
Yeah, I totally forget about that, but I just thought it was a good interpretation.
Yeah. So I don't know if you want to dive into why you do it at all. I don't know if you want to put that out there.
Oh, yeah. That's fine.
Because I mean, it's very it's like one of like a very defining thing in your artwork. Yeah. I think of all these like it almost looks like when you're like if people are like blocking and like doing like gridding of work or something like that, and you're kind of almost like showing that. I don't know if that's what you're actually doing because it is
in a lot of ways. Yeah,
okay.
It's actually like at the heart of it is very much exposing the process of like the traditional painting process. We do it's the tone of the canvas, right? And then you have the block-in stage, and then you have the more detailed rendered stage or subdivided plane stage, right? And you can literally partition that out. So like the gaps, that's the tone of the canvas.
Right.
The geometric planes are the block-ins, and then on top of that you do the rendered form. So it's literally following the stages. And but the one thing I like it optically as a device is that there's tension created with the flatness and then the illusion of form. So you have these, and where I got that is Chuck Close. You know those big portraits.
I've heard of him.
With the ones where he did the portraits where it's more each square is more of an abstract shape, right?
Yeah.
It's interesting because when you're looking at it, your brain can't make up your mind whether it's like a picture of a person or if it's just paint. And depending on the distance you're looking at it, it changes too. And it's just flip-flopping continuously in your brain. And there's a tension there. And tension is a great thing to have, in the painting. Because it gives that sense, it's curiosity. And it invites mystery to it.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's great. Yeah. Yeah. Do you use the like, because there's moments in your paintings where the lines are almost all gone and it's just kind of a painting.
Yeah.
Do you use that as kind of from the tension? Do you use that as relief at any point or what is it?
Well, so I'm big on design. Design is all I pretty much care about. So it's for that.
And and your family.
I guess so. We're not talking about painting. Yeah, we're not talking. Yeah. Total psychopath. Yeah. But yeah, it's for the design. So it's like the form parts. It's kind of where you're trying to get more representational, and then the flat parts are less representational, right? So what we're doing is, like, if I want areas to be more of an object, I'll make it more rendered.
Okay. Yeah. That's what I was thinking you were doing. But I didn't know if you were also, because it makes, just because when you brought up tension, I was like, because I do enjoy like the balance of like tension and like the relieving of tension, you know?
There's that too, where it's like, if you do a big geometric shape, it's non-clustered shapes, right?
Right.
So then you have relief.
Right.
But then if you have a lot of small shapes, it's clustered, so you have more tension too. And then you need, for design, basic design of clustered versus non-clustered, you want to have that in the painting, where it's different rhythm, right? So that's part of that too. It's like a lot of these the things that I'm doing it's for multiple reasons.
Right.
And usually that's when, why you would do something is like, it's not just one reason you're going to put. There's actually, it's multifunctional. So then it's compelling to have that in the piece, right?
Right.
As a device. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you're highly rendering, are you trying to draw eyes towards those things?
It's more, it's illusion. You're just creating the illusion of form. So you're just trying to make it indicate to the viewer that it's a space. So there's perspective structures that you can make, or rendered form like a figure, like a face or something. You're automatically implying that by rendering form, that it's in a space.
Right.
Right. And then so it's like, but it's also a linear space. And so if you put a face on it, it's suddenly that abstract environment isn't really an abstract environment anymore.
Right.
It's become something else. It's not, it could be a wall, it could be light. And so there's that use too. And generally speaking, the focal point is also an obvious answer, right?
Right.
You would render the focal point to make more interest rather than
but it doesn't happen all the time. Like like even the painting kind of behind you, there's like these disc things. It's like drawing your eye towards the right corner of the painting. Yeah. Which I thought was like very interesting when I saw that on your thing. I was like, oh, he's kind of like pulling my eye to a weird area of the painting, which isn't the figure then kind of isn't the focal point in that because of that.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing too. It's like when we get all representational, we get a little bit biased about like the human figure being the focal point. But that's not really one thing that I would say is a great device all the time. You can have a figure in it and not have the figure be the focal point.
Right.
Right.
Just like a narrative tool.
Yeah. Because there's second read, first read, second read, third read. And all those things. And so it's like, it's controlling that for the intention of the piece. What?
I said, I don't know what that means, but I'll just nod yes. You're like, first read, second read. I'm like, absolutely I do. Absolutely I know what that means.
It's, where your eye is drawn, your eye goes through certain movements. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Okay. Then I do know what that means. I just don't know the technical term. I don't know anything.
I'm sure you do. But yeah, so it's like, it's mainly, the main focus for me is composition and design. And so I'm mainly focusing in those terms, not about whether it's formy or flat that much. It's not a priority. It's there, but it's not a priority. I'm looking at how I can move the eye around and how we can make a pleasing composition. Yeah.
And okay, so when you're doing that, because one thing I noticed was like, it seems like architecture and just kind of even like a certain aesthetic as far as design of the environment the figure is in seems like a big thing for you. Like it's almost like mid-century modern design plays a big factor in your work.
Exactly.
Is that just is there a reason for that? Do you just like that design, or does the time period mean anything, or?
Because they're good designers.
Yeah, that's true.
They were really good. I'm a big fan of Frank Lloyd Wright, and his offshoots like John Lautner and that mid-century architecture. I got like a book about mid-century posters, like graphic designers. They're so good. Yeah. For me, it's like an aesthetic sweet spot of where they're going, where it's modern, new, interesting, but also has this quality that is operating optically a little bit in a traditional way. So that part it's definitely a taste thing. Yeah. But I also do think they're really just technically really good. I mean, Frank Lloyd Wright as an architect is one of the best that ever lived. Yeah. Yeah. And why would I put that in there? Well, if you're going to make a picture and you're trying to design it, all the objects inside there need to be designed as well to be good or whatever that we mean by good but pleasing. So you want to, why would you put an ugly house in it if you were trying to make a pretty painting, let's say? Right? I mean, it would make sense if you were designing and having intention of all the objects inside the picture to also be intentional to the goal of creating a good composition. And so that's kind of why, and the fact that, so like with my work, the way I think about doing your quote unquote style or whatever is that it's not about taking things out or choosing one style over another, like being like, I want to be an abstract painter, so then that's what I'm choosing, or like I'm being a representational traditional painter, so I'm going to do that. I actually think it's about combining things. It's not about eliminating things. So I like a lot. I'm just a general fan of art, so I love a lot of different things. I like abstract art. I like some contemporary art, and I like traditional classical art.
You're not supposed to be on here then. You only like one art. Pick one
art, right? But my goal in how do I make my own paintings is how do I combine all the things that I like in the way that I want it to be, rather than trying to recreate a style or be a certain style, right? Yeah. So I'm trying with my paintings to combine as many of the artists that I like into the painting as much as I can.
That's interesting.
So I like Frank Lloyd Wright. Right. I'm going to put it in there. I'm going to use his architecture.
Did you ask permission?
I actually did a series on the Marin County Civic Center one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that building is gorgeous. It's amazing. But yeah, and then I like Chuck Close. I like Uglow. I like Vermeer. I like Hopper. I like Rothko. I like Mondrian, Morandi. I'm just
dead or alive.
All of them, right? Instead of choosing something, I'm like, wow, how can I put them all into something?
That's interesting.
Into the piece, right?
Yeah, I could totally see that in your work now when you say that.
I noticed Uglow. On kind of before, maybe when you were tiptoeing into this, maybe.
Yeah, there was previous areas too. It's
where it was. Yeah, it seemed more similar to that.
Yeah, I like Coldstream, so I've tried to put a little bit of Coldstream in there lately. And all that. Yeah,
because I really love the mid-century modern aesthetic. I've always had this weird issue where I don't see my artwork in that aesthetic, if that makes any sense. It's almost like it doesn't fit there, but that's the aesthetic I like. And it's I've given up on the should I ever try to think that way? But for a while I was like, should I? And I don't know if it's you having a similar, do you ever think in that terms does my artwork fit in the aesthetic of architecture that I enjoy?
No. No. It's about taste. It's about cultivating taste, and your personal taste is what comes out whether you want it to not on a piece as an artist, right? So it's being aware of your own taste and trying the best that you can to kind of put that taste into the paintings and
make it tasty.
Yeah, tasty. It's literally like flavor. It's like, what flavors are you putting in there?
For sure.
And so it's not about genre. It's about what devices, that are in the painting that the other older artists or the artists that you like used. My mentor always told me about, like, if you like an artist, you should look at who they learned from or took from, not that artist themselves, especially in contemporary art. You shouldn't be looking, like, let's say if you like Alex Kanevsky, don't just look at him, but look at who he looked at.
Right.
And then you can actually gather this information of what sort of things they're reading from those paintings that they're putting visually into their paintings. And then it gives you a clue into you can also take things from other artists or how to interpret things and put it into your own work. So, but our aesthetic philosophy internally in ourselves is kind of, it's one of those where it's kind of set, but you can also grow it and foster it. Taste is it's a little hard to define, right? Taste. And I think that's where it actually all matters, is a painter or a painting that is just above good, like really good, is because the artist had really good taste. It wasn't really because they're technically the best or like, those things. I don't think that really is a factor, because if you look at it, like, let's say we're talking about representational, traditional atelier paintings, there's like 100,000 painters that are technically pretty much on the same level with each other. Right. There's not that much of a difference. There is a difference, but not that much. Yeah. It's like, if we're talking about percentages, it's not that high of a difference. But what's distinguishing a painter like Degas from, like, I don't know, another, that era of painting, is because of their taste. And it's I think it's interpreted as talent a lot of the times.
A little bit about that, just because, like, for instance, we're on this weird metaphor of flavors as well, right? But for instance, like knife skill, as far as like a technique in cooking, is a very like respected thing, and it does define some types of food. Like, I think there is I think it's a ballot. I think, technique can only get you so far. Yeah. You can't like do it. It's not only that, but I think it plays a big part. I think
technique is a tool.
Exactly.
So it's not making the painting.
Right.
It's a tool to make the painting.
For sure.
And then what I'm talking about is taste is often interpreted, I think, a lot of times as talent. So I think it's like, it's the 10% that makes a painting that much better than another painting is, quote, most people would say talent, but I'd say it's taste. And taste is very subjective, once again, but also at the same time, there's some people that have such good taste that it's almost undeniable. Like Frank Lloyd Wright, as an architect, it's undeniable that he had good taste in how he constructed and the aesthetics that he was putting into the work. And Degas too. He's like, it's undeniable the way he's combining those things and composing it that way with those, it's like, that's undeniably good taste. Yeah. And it's like, I can't do that. And that's that 10% that I can't do that, is because it's in this taste realm and it's not technical or any knowledge. Well, you can cultivate taste, so you can learn more and cultivate taste. But I think that's where it really is like the next level stuff.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Do you think about that part of it consciously? Like, do you have ways of trying to cultivate your taste in a way? Like, I guess but through looking at books and stuff like that as
looking at all sorts of art and aesthetic stuff. Yeah. Movies, read books, like movie posters, looking at art that you might not think that you like, but usually I associate like looking at things that you like as like comfort zones. You kind of like it because it's comfortable. So how do you expand something or learn more is to try and look at things that you probably don't, you feel like you don't like, but it's kind of because you don't know anything about it. Usually, a lot of the times, it's not always, but like a lot of the times I see that happening a lot.
That's interesting. Yeah. I like that a lot.
Yeah. So like, that's why it's like, I really don't buy into, camps of artists that are like, representational is the way to go, or like abstract is the way to go. It's like, that doesn't make any sense to me. Yeah. It literally doesn't compute in my brain as like making any sense. Cause it's like, they're all valid.
Right.
And it's just the lack of knowledge. Like, let's be honest. Like a lot of them, they just don't know anything about those genres.
No, you didn't. Who is he? Jeff? What's his name? Jeff something.
Why is it Jeff?
I don't know.
I don't know any Jeffs actually. But yeah, it's like
that's perfect. Yeah.
I mean, it's not. I'm not saying
Jeff,
that it completely is that way, but I'd say it's likely. And I can harken this to my own anecdotal experiences where it's like there were a lot of artists that I didn't really like, but then as slowly as I was learning more about art, I started to actually like them. Like actually, honestly, Degas I didn't really care about when I was really young.
Oh, right.
But then now,
how dare you?
Top one. It's like
wow,
he did it.
Yeah, it's kind of like
he fought.
Yeah.
There's differences going on where it's like.
Yeah. I enjoy food a good amount, and I always talk like my wife when I first met her. There's like certain food she wouldn't eat, and we go, "Oh, you just like ate a bad version of that food, or you didn't try the right thing." And there's always like this weird thing I have with people that don't like food, where it's like a challenge for me, where I try to have them taste things in the right and like way. And then there's like a weird thing where when you get someone to try a style of food in a way where they're like, oh, this is delicious, then you can almost take them into deeper waters. And now you can try
there's a bigger world.
Yeah.
And this all comes back to the idea that it's all cultural.
Right.
It's all our cultural perceptions and nurture, that's happened is like, especially with food, like the reason why people like there's some people that won't eat raw fish or something, right? It's completely cultural.
What were you saying?
There's no objective reason behind it, really.
Yeah,
but it's cultural, and that's the part where it's like it's perception.
You ever see like the where they show like kids' school lunches in like different countries, and like I think like Korea would have like squid with broth, and then just like no kid in America would that would be a huge culture shock, and they're eating like tater tots and
horrible food.
Horrible food.
That's not
like chicken nuggets.
That's why it's like I think there's a lot of. I mean, we are humans, so there's a lot of
some of us
intentions of feeling a certain way about things, and there's incentive to feel a certain way about ideas. But I don't think it's necessary in a lot of times where it's not practical.
Yeah,
just thinking about it almost like in a purely non-emotional way. It's like, what's practical?
At least allow yourself to go there is the thing, at the least, I would say. I mean, at the end of the day, if you look at some art and your taste doesn't match that art, that's perfectly fine with me too. If you're like, that's not for me, I'm like, cool, that's not for you. But at least like go and like feel it out.
Yeah, and I mean, at least have the knowledge behind it, like an educated knowledge about what it is, whether you like it or not. It's like, it can only serve you as more information to help you. So it's knowledge is power thing, It's always the same in that sense. And so I think it's helpful to look at as much as you possibly can. And everything's been done, so you can actually almost find exactly what you want to make. If you Google it hard enough, you will be able to find a pretty close version of what you're trying to do.
Then you just need a light box, kids.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I think that's interesting,
Yeah, that's for sure interesting.
It's so, in a lot of ways, easier.
Yeah, I've talked about it before, but I have this like weird thing where I try the hardest not to learn.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking when he was saying
and it's based off of that. Like, I've mentioned it before, but there is this thing I enjoy. One of the things I enjoy probably maybe the most about art is when I have like this idea of something I want to do.
Yeah.
And then I accomplish that idea, and I feel it's like this weird thing of like I'm being as creative as I can be.
Right.
And when I dive deep into like I already know that everything has been done before, but if I explain the idea I have and someone's like, oh yeah, like kind of like this person, then I go like, it almost like takes away from that.
Right. Your sense of accomplishment.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
And that like, not only that, but like the exercise of being creative, it almost like, it pulls away from like me trying to like think of new things.
Right.
Where knowing all these things, it's like now I'm limited to hopefully I find something like.
Well, this is the kind of misinterpretation of that, like everything's been done before, is it kind of is associated with the idea of infinity. So there's infinite numbers, right?
Right.
1 to infinity or whatever.
I've counted before. Yeah. I got there. It's not that hard. It just takes a while.
But between 1 and 2, there's also infinite numbers, right? So there's all these things. If you think of like the numbers as genres of painting or whatever, like 1 and 2s, there's still infinite variations in between those two, right?
Yeah.
So even if there's everything been done before, there's still variations.
Right.
And so, it's not like a hold up where it's kind of like everything's been done before and then you get like a give up-itude kind of thing. I mean, it's like whatever. I think it's actually more of like there's references that you can look to help yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean...
But you won't be recreating it necessarily. You won't be making the exact same
I totally get that.
Yeah.
For me, it's the exercise of doing it alone, which I am like into, and it's not necessarily to like pat myself on the back and go, because I already know like it's done. Like after I've done it, I can go and figure out who else did it and be perfectly fine with it.
Yeah.
It's almost like having no other influences on that concept, other than me always constantly looking at artwork. But that's more of like the taste thing rather than the concept. So for me, the concept is like I want to not be influenced in that realm. Taste is perfectly fine, but the concept has to stay like uninterrupted by outside influences.
Well,
for me,
there's 2 points. So like one point is everything is influencing us all the time.
Right. Yeah.
So it's actually not possible unless you're in a vacuum.
Yeah.
Right. But also the second point is that I think it's a narrative that you tell yourself, and if it works, it works. So if you're, we're narratives, like I said again, the narrative thing. If that helps you make a painting, then that's fine. It works, right?
Yeah,
so
that's
I don't think it really...
It's just my process, really, is what I'm talking about. I'm not telling anyone else to not learn the history of art. I love learning history in general. Like history, I can dive deep into it and enjoy the shit out of it. Art history is like the one thing where I'm more like... I'll consume it, but when it comes to like concept stuff, I'm weird about it, I think.
Yeah, I think the concept part is... It's kind of one of those areas where it's, in a lot of senses, it does seem vague. And it is. But it's also, I think it's very clear when there's to a person who really has something to say. Because for somebody who really needs to say something, they're not thinking about what should they say. They already have what they need to say. So they're just working all into trying to get that out. Right? So, and... I think that if you have something to say, I think it's powerful.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
It's like, for instance, the simplest, like if I said I wanted to, even if the concept is love, right?
Right.
If I want to go like, I want to make a painting of love, I don't want to like figure out how every artist did love and then go about that. I would want to like very much like kind of come back to myself and only think of how I would want to explain that, in my experience and how I would take that experience and develop a image based off of that in a weird way, which I mean would be hard as fuck. I don't know how people would paint love in general. That seems like a hard thing to tackle.
Well, it's too vague. It's too general.
I mean, I would go, I don't know. It would, the emotion of like, maybe like teenage love would be very tough. And I don't know.
You'd have to break it down to a subgenre, maybe.
Just usually, if the concept isn't really good, it's because it's way too generalized and vague.
Yeah.
It needs to be specified a little more to actually have an intention behind it. Because there's no indication of intention.
Right.
Just by saying love. It doesn't mean anything, really, actually. Yeah. So, I think, well, it's fine if it works, but also I do think self-awareness of it is also important, where you know these possible iterations of it, and you know you're not going to make the exact same iteration.
Right.
But there are devices in there that help you be like, that works for that intention, that little piece there, and then you can use some of that piece or make a modified version of that piece of that device and put it into your paintings, and then it helps make a different version by combining it with another device.
Yeah, I mean, right? I get that. I get that. I almost want to like do the opposite, and like it's like if I created something, like let's pretend love again, and then I would go back and see someone and they tackled it maybe in a very similar way.
Right.
I would go, oh, that's interesting. Like or I could say, oh, they tackled it in this way, and they would still allow me the growth of like downloading how they did it, but it would also kind of give me that like exercise of trying to create things.
Right.
Like not necessarily, like it's only art history based really, because I understand everything influences me.
Right.
And as far as, but the medium that I work in, it's almost like trying to limit the amount of influence that could have on me.
I guess I see what you're saying. I just think those are different directions of freedom. So there's positive freedom and negative freedom, right? Where positive freedom is where you're working freedom in towards something, and then there's negative freedom where you're freedom from something. And the thing I think is that it's kind of like, which way are you going to go? Which way of freedom are you going to use almost, right?
So freedom towards something? I'm
in like politics, it's kind of like, so negative freedom is like freedom from other people infringing on your rights. And then positive freedom is like, let's say like some social justice thing where you're wanting to create freedom
to like be
for an ideal.
For like gay people to be married. Like, is that towards something or?
Yeah, that would, I guess that
apply. I'm
not that good with the definitions very well, but that probably is like you want, let's say,
gaining something. Is that what?
Yeah, in a way, it's like you want to. Yeah, like the gay rights thing. That's positive freedom.
Okay,
I'm pretty sure that that works that way. Yeah, to allow people to get married. The freedom to allow people to get married. That's towards something, and so it's positive freedom, I think.
Right.
And then negative freedom is like no government intrusion kind of thing. So it's like those are different directions.
So don't take from me.
Yeah, don't take from me or don't infringe on me, right?
Okay.
Yeah, so those are two different directions, and it's not about which is better, blah, blah, blah. It's just which direction. The momentum of movement is different, right? If you're thinking about it that way. And I think like in terms of creating a work without trying not to be influenced by somebody is like a different direction. Right. But I also think you're actually a slave to that rule.
Yeah, for sure.
Right? So it's kind of, it's not necessarily more freedom anyways.
No, yeah. I mean,
like
I'm a slave to a lot of things.
Exactly.
I mean, it's fine.
And that's where it's like the choices are being made of like being consciously aware of those rules.
Right.
And then selecting those rules to the best that you can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I understand that. I understand that there is flaws to what I'm doing, and there's things that are negative to like maybe my growth. But I just have this idea that the exercise of trying to accomplish something through you and you alone, in a weird roundabout way. We already. Without like in my medium is is kind of what I want to do. It's just trying to exercise a part of my brain that I think is good for creating.
Right. The only downside I do see with that is habits. So humans are creatures of habits.
Yeah.
Whenever we kind of turn ourselves off from things, it seems like we just repeat actions that are habituated, and it's kind of not a progression.
Right.
Yeah. And so I don't know. Maybe that it depends on obviously the personality, all that. But that's where I think it's also just looking or learning more has always been a priority in order to kind of always change and stay away from habits.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I'm not anti-learning.
Right.
I just have set a weird rule limiting learning in a certain, I love learning about plenty of things. It's just that weird thing of influence off of that is, I don't know.
And I mean, at the end of the day, when you're making the painting, it's only you and the painting.
Yeah.
That's it. There's nothing else. You're just doing it.
Yeah.
And you're not really copying. You're not really.
Yeah. And my apprentice that I tell how to paint it and then whip them if they're not doing good.
Yeah. So I think it's different too when you're actually physically painting it. And then when you're not painting it, but thinking is different to actually doing it too.
Yeah.
And so in that moment, there are different points, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes. I mean, sometimes I'm thinking while painting, I guess.
Yeah.
It's like improv, maybe a bit. I don't know. That's cool.
Yeah.
I like that. Should we start diving into your painting? Probably so.
Yeah.
Sure.
Do you have a title for this bad boy?
No.
Girl?
I don't think I put a title on this one yet.
Are paintings boys or girls? Or does it depend on the figure inside of it?
I don't know. I don't have any of that.
Okay. So non-gender specific painting?
Yeah, it's just the painting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I guess we figured out objects have no sex. Is what you're trying to...
It's an object.
How dare you? So this painting, I mean, it's a girl at what looks to be a coffee shop or something similar to that. A diner or something with 2 cups and a plate on a table.
Yes.
Sergio, you described that. I feel like I look around the table every time.
Yeah. Everything Josh said is right so far.
Yes.
And yeah, it looks to be sort of a diner setting, but as it moves toward the other side of the painting, like one half of it is the girl sitting at a table alone, but
2/3, but no big deal.
Yeah, something like that. 5/8. And then as you go further out toward the right, it becomes a bit more abstract. There is still a bit of an environment there, but it gets a little bit more open to interpreting what actually is happening in the space over there. And it's a pretty muted color scheme. As I'd say a lot of your work is a muted color scheme. That's pretty intentional.
Yeah.
Some of your work I was noticing, it would have like almost like everything in the painting felt like skin tone. And I was like, that's interesting. I don't know if that's intentional or not.
It's been kind of, color's been a little bit of a topic I've been kind of looking around a little lately.
Okay.
I don't really like too garish colors, but at the same time, I do know that it's not that powerful if you don't have strong colors. But yeah, it's I don't mind the colors being that way because that's a taste thing for sure. Yeah, and then with this one, it's referencing a Deben Corn painting. It's it's a mirror, and so you had this composition where it's like a figure on a table, and then there's a mirror behind, and then it does this cool thing, and it's like, but if you notice, the figure is there, but in the mirror, there's no reflection of that person.
Right.
Ghost.
That's a little
That's interesting.
Narrative, and then the plates, and then, but so like lately, what I've been doing is I've been making 3D environments using my computer. So these are computer generated environments. And then I put the figure in it. And this is kind of based off of Lautner building. Yeah, I think it's a Walstrom. Oh, was it Walstrom maybe was the house. Walstrom house. John Lautner was like the base that I use. And I kind of move things around because I make the buildings, right? Yeah. So I can actually do a lot of different things to it. I can put whatever I want in it, essentially.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And that's, the reason being is as representational painters, we're painting from something. So I kind of find it interesting to change what we're painting from. It's, like painting from life or painting from photo. Well, what if I change that around a lot? And so like the previous series was from memory. And then the one before that, the fan fiction one was using dollhouse scale. I mean like miniatures, dollhouse miniatures. And so I was painting from that. And then the one before that, I think I was using photos. Yeah. I just think about what are we doing as, like I'm a representational painter in 2018. What am I doing?
Right.
And really thinking about I'm painting from something. So let's explore that. And then what does representational paintings do? They convey narrative, generally speaking, or there's a narrative in it. So what do we do with that, or how do we use it? And so those are the areas I'm usually thinking about. So this is a little bit of a test piece, I guess, but it's not that much of like a specific narrative. There's the Diebenkorn reference. There's Lautner. There's I forgot what the 2 cups were.
Yeah, I was thinking the 2 cups meant like you would just assume she's sitting with someone.
Yeah, it's implying that there's more than one person, but the other person's not there, right? So you kind of have that. Yeah. And then the time of day thing. Yeah.
You also mentioned like the quiet thing. I mean, last week we were talking with Zach Oldenkamp.
Oh yeah.
And he mentioned kind of the same exact thing. He said that they had this discussion about if your art had a sound, what would it sound like?
Yeah.
And he said he wants his to sound quiet. And I was oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
And that's kind of why when I was going through your work, I was like, it's very similar. I get that similar like quiet feel. And I know there was like a video I saw where on your Instagram where there was like a girl in a train. It seemed like a girl you knew in a train.
That's my wife.
And it seemed like very quiet as well.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't know if he's going for this, but this kind of, all the paintings, they kind of seem like a person.
Yeah.
In a very quiet state, you know, just kind of like existing, I guess. I don't know. Like,
I mean, it's clearly a Hopper reference too. And, his paintings are a pretty big reference that I have in the paintings. And
Hopper.
Yeah. The sound thing actually is totally, because when I see a painting that really, I go, whoa, I hear this kind of monotone sound in my head.
Like white noise kind of?
No, it's a deep, it's like just a tone.
Like the old
tone.
like telephone, like the double like
but quieter and calmer. Like when I saw Andrew Wyeth paint one of the Andrew Wyeth paintings, this was like way, when I was in art when I first went to art school in Georgia, they had a group, retrospective of Wyeth's paintings, and I saw one of his paintings, and I was like, I hear that sound, and you kind of just stand there, and I was like, whoa, this is something. There's something here. There's something there, and it's the one where it's the guy, and then there's a hill, and he looks like he's kind of dancing. It's this big painting. And then I was like, it's just a person on a hill, right? It seems like whatever. But then there's something to the picture. You don't know what it is, but there's something more going on, is like the sense you get. Well, at least when I saw it, was like, I feel like there's something going on. And there's something going on with that hill. There's nothing there. It's just a hill, right? And then I read the side note thing, and it's like, it was a painting done after his father died, and on the other side of the hill is where his father's buried. And all of that kind of weird sense of something over the hill is conveyed in a nonverbal way. And those are the paintings I really, really like. Is they're not telling you. There's something going on. And it's that sense of mystery, too. And definitely with a Hopper, why I'm such a big fan of Hopper, and a lot of people resonate with it, is that sense is there. They're like, these people are sitting in the restaurant or in their home. Right. It's like, what's going on?
There's that tension as well.
Yeah, there's a tension there. And there's a sense of mystery. And it's intentional. Because it's so consistent in his work. And that's the type of art, I personally really like a lot. Like Vermeer is a big one, too. I mean, his is actually clear. You can actually read because, everything in the picture is there to serve as a symbol so that you can read the narrative, the allegory in it. That I like, too. I use that device a lot. So I use a lot of paintings in the background, objects in the picture to actually indicate, like, hey, this is actually what's going on.
Right.
Yeah. Which I think that's a very good device. It's a genre painting device that, classical painting, they use that all the time. That I really like. And so, Wyeth, big one. Hopper, Hammershoy, a big one. They're all kind of they're all conveying the nonverbal in the picture. And that's where it's like, when I mean by narrative, this whole time I was saying narrative, it's not literally really a story, but there's something going on. And there's, it's not just a static picture.
Right.
It's not a static moment.
Like the story you told earlier, it's not that beautiful.
And so I think I do think it's inherent to representational painting. I do think it's a device that's very powerful in representational painting. And so that's why I think I try and keep it there or do it. And and that's why it's like, when you're talking about the interpretation of my piece, I wasn't really thinking, that it mattered in that kind of literal narrative sense. If they just get that sensation, because I feel like everybody who sees a Hopper is feeling pretty close.
But do you think that like, for instance, you mentioned that you felt that with the Wyeth piece, right? Because, and you didn't know, and then you read about it, and you're like, oh, like, now, like, it kind of, do you think that is valuable to, like, having that, like,
the plaque?
Not the plaque, but like, just like him as an artist having that, you know what I mean? Like, he has the narrative. Like, if without the plaque, like, if you can watch, do you feel like you, as an artist, you would need that as well? Like, you would need that.
Yeah, I do think it's,
because there is, like, what's the narrative behind the Nighthawk or whatever piece? Isn't there, like, some narrative about, like, World War or something like that?
Well, there's the one where there's, like, horses running into a tunnel. That one's about World War II. Was it 2? Yeah. Because America was just about to go to war.
Right.
And it was all about the social anxiety. That one is definitely about World War II. There's, like, the horse in the bridge one. I forgot what the Nighthawk one was.
I thought it had to do with, like, the day after something big happened. And that's why it's, like, so quiet. It feels quiet except for even there.
Because there's also, art historian interpretations of those paintings. So it's not necessarily the most reliable because
they exaggerate.
There's some art, like Hopper didn't really say a lot about what those paintings are about necessarily. There's like those notes that he has, the sketch notes, and then there's a lot written about it. Those were done by his wife.
Oh.
So it's not even him. And so there's a lot of and he doesn't want to explain because he's obviously not trying to have this like verbal explanation of the work really.
Right.
Which is pretty,
But what I mean is like, even, do you think that part of it, having that like background for them, from what you're explaining, it almost seems important. Like,
I think so. I personally think it's pretty important. If you're a representational painter. Right. I think it's inherent. If you're not a representational painter, it's not the same. But if you're doing representational painting, I think it's actually pretty. I actually think that's the meat of it, not the technical.
Not the salad.
Yeah, I think it's kind of one of those things where I personally feel it's overlooked a lot. And
on this painting specifically, it seems like the plates in the cups are the highest rendered thing. Is that?
Yeah.
Are you trying to draw them to that to kind of come to the conclusion that she's with someone?
Yeah, it's got that part's a secondary read. Yeah, secondary read, I guess. Yeah, it's important. The plates and the cups. It's kind of one of those where it's like it kind of doesn't work telling the story verbally.
Also, you mentioned that you want harsh critique, so real piece of shit. I'm just kidding.
Okay.
I'm just kidding.
That's fine.
No, I like it. I just didn't want to do the whole, what was it called again? The circle of life? That's what you said earlier. But yeah, I don't know. There's definitely a feel of tension. I mean, your character, not the character, but the person in your paintings, a lot of time they have this like, I don't know how to explain it. I didn't know if you're trying to, like, they almost have like a no emotion face, which in a way makes me feel bad for them.
Right.
And a lot of times they're dressed very nicely.
Right.
And they're in these like, the mid-century modern architect. And it gives me this like feeling that they're almost living in a world they don't enjoy, or I don't know how to explain. Like they're not happy. They're just kind of going through life, I guess, is the feeling I feel. Maybe, I don't know. The more I think about people's artwork, the more I'm realizing that like maybe it's just like a reflection. Pun intended.
I think that's really good. Yeah.
I mean, I'm not sad. I mean, maybe I hate my job. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe I'm like,
I think that's like kind of what good paintings do is like it's more of the person looking at it is interpreting it.
Yeah.
You're interpreting that.
But I do try to like think of what the artist is trying to like, what they're trying to accomplish with the painting.
I definitely intentionally don't have figures being like super expressive in their emotions,
right?
Because it's so my, theme wise, it's mainly about perception and the internal versus external. So it's kind of with the premise that there's this external world, and then there's in our head us, where your conscious self it's practically another world. And it's internal. And sometimes
I got a big head. So I got a big old world.
But there's sometimes it's like those two are independent to each other. And there are moments where it actually exposes that. Right? And it's I'm interested in those like mundane everyday moments where essentially your consciousness part is like revealed to yourself that you're like this person and you're thinking, and then so like moments like content is a feeling, but it's also fleeting, but it's also a recognition of what's exactly happening or who you are, And so
it's interesting. Is that why? Because I don't know, this might sound really stupid, but the like your geometric shapes or whatever. I was wondering if that was you, almost like what you're saying, but the thing I associated it with was like the Matrix in a weird way.
Oh,
but like this weird thing of like life isn't like that the world, like this isn't real almost.
Yeah.
And in a weird way, kind of that's what I thought of when you were explaining what you're explaining.
Yeah.
And I don't know if
where it's ambiguous
and is that why that decision to make that? Because that's what I thought when I saw that.
Yeah.
Was like, I wonder if he's trying to like almost like a Matrix thing, but not.
It's not a simulation thing.
No.
I know what you're saying, and it's totally intentional. Like I'm always interested in perception, and that's where it is. It's like we're perceiving this world a certain way,
right?
And then there's this but this external world that exists, and we're never actually going to be one-to-one in that because of perception. Perception is the doorway between the external and external, right? So I like that area, and I think it's interesting. And it's intentional that there's this totally dual thing happening with the flat and the form, and that's part of that.
And you're kind of like seeing, because I was thinking if it is like the grid work behind, I was thinking, oh, maybe he's trying to show you like what's behind the painting or what, like, I don't know. No,
it's all there. And like I said, I've been talking about narrative, about fictional narrative. It's all referencing that. And so it's like, that's my theme. Essentially, like I go more specific in different series, from like what's going on in your head to what's going on in the world. Well, there's one I did. The first series I did was about waking up. So like, you know, the exact moment you wake up, like you have a dream and then you're awake. Okay. What actually is happening between that? Nobody can remember the in-between part, right? We wake up and then if it was a strong dream, we're like, oh, you're remembering the dream. Or if you didn't have a dream, you just wake up and you're like, what should I do? I woke up. Right. But can we actually remember the exact moment we woke up? Like that transition from that dream to waking up, right? So that was that series. And then the second series was Red. Yeah, this is the Marin County one. That was, I forgot what that one was about. It was about duality. Something. But, you know, it's all about perception. And then there was one about content. That was the next series. In that moment of content as a temporary thing where it comes and it goes. And it's really like the moment you realize you're content, it goes away kind of thing. And then the third one was fan fiction, I guess. That one is actually a little different. It was about horror stories. Horror fiction. But the thing is like all this stuff, this is kind of how I see myself as a representational painter in 2019, is that I'm like a fan fiction writer. You know what fan fiction writing is, right? Yeah. You get like the era of thing and you make up your own version. Yeah, like Star Wars fans make their own Star Wars fiction. Yeah. I feel like representational paintings right now, that's what, at least for me, is what we are doing. We're fans of representational painting, so we make, you know, the fan fiction kind of version. That's interesting. Yeah. And that's why it's like, and I'm not saying it as a negative. I think that's just what we're doing. You know, that's just what we're doing. And so I want to be conscious of that. And so I'm intentionally referencing all the references that I'm referencing. Like I put as many paintings that I'm referencing. Right. And that's kind of, I think that allows you to actually make more iterations. That's interesting. Rather than denying or pretending that we're being original and stuff like that, I think we should, you know, that part actually frees you. So it's that, once again, freedom from, freedom to, you know, positive, negative freedom thing. Yeah, I'd have to think about that for a bit, but I like that in a way. Yeah, my mentor really told me about, like, it's all in the direction that you're thinking about. Going away, painting away from something or painting towards something. Like you're painting from a photo. Are you trying to paint like the photo or you're trying to paint not like the photo? Those are two different momentums of thought, right? Yeah. And intention. And that's going to show in the picture. And so those are important things to acknowledge. If you don't know it, like if you don't acknowledge those things, it might get a little confusing, you know? And I think it actually really steps up the painting if you really acknowledge those things. That's why it's like the whole argument of painting from photo, whatever argument, I don't care. But it's the direction. Are you painting towards it or are you painting away from it? Painting from life. Are you trying to simplify the information that you have or are you trying to, you know, add information? Because life one is like, it's the most amount of information that you could possibly get. Photos, there's a little bit less of information. And so it's like, those are movements in painting. And I think those are important parts to acknowledge. And it makes a huge difference. Because you can see paintings that are like, they're just trying to make the photo. And then there's ones where it's like, they're actually trying to make their own painting. And like, you know, those are, I think in this day and age of representational painting, because photos, where a lot of us are painting from photos anyways, too. Right. You know, even if we say there's a lot. Like, we know who you are, Jeff, you dirty dog. Whoever this Jeff person is. God. But I think it's important to really meditate on that and be like, not as a bad or good thing, but just being like, what are we doing? Yeah. You know? For sure. I think it's important in that aspect. Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah. And, you know, the reason why I think about design a lot is because of what the property of a 2D picture is. A 2D picture is 2D, right? 2D is a space or perimeter with only two axes, X and Y, width and height, right? And a picture plane, since it's in the real world, it's finite. It's not infinite. So then there's a perimeter, and that perimeter is going to be a geometric shape, i.e. the canvas. And there's going to be and that shape is geometric shape. So it's a mathematical shape, right? It's a visual expression of math, geometric shapes. So then within that, what you put or where you put things is a mathematical coordinate, a point, right?
Yeah.
And so those relationships of different points make a design. And so those things, if you took away a lot of almost all these other, subjective things, what is 2D? It reduces down to that. And so that's why it's like, okay, it's about placement of points. And that goes kind of into Coldstream and, Uglow and all those guys. But I think that's the part where I'm focusing on, because it's like all these other things that could change, but that doesn't change. So, and that's part of making a picture. Well, I'll focus on that and try to do the best version of that too. Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Because if you, a point is a dot, and then if you accumulate infinite numbers of dots, you make a line. And then if you have a line, and then you have a mass, a shape, if you close off the line, right? So it's all points and coordinates. And there's a relationship that you can actually measure, because it's a geometric shape, it's a mathematical shape. You can measure.
It's fleeting. I don't know if we're going to pick that up. But
you can measure all that. And that's why it's like music. There's bars, there's rhythm.
Oh, I got bars.
And so, I think that part's really interesting in terms of what is a 2D plane.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what the picture is, and that's where you get like minimalism. You end up with what's a 2D picture, and then you just end up with a canvas, the white canvas. Because if you took everything possible away, you end up with just the surface itself.
Yeah.
That's what that point of that white canvas is, right? So with that idea in mind, I'm not doing that. What am I trying to do as a representational painter? Is how do I manipulate these points to make it look like something that we see in real life?
Right.
That's what representational painting is. And so that's all I'm interested in terms of what representationally it looks. And then what's flat, what's, form, not that high of a priority. But arrangement is a high priority.
That's interesting.
Yeah,
you almost talk about it like a video game.
It's a video game.
Like, I don't know. Or like, it's very mathematical, but like, I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong about the video game analogy, but the way you think about it is crazy. I don't even know if I agree, but it's not even necessary to like debate that or anything. It's just interesting because what's really happening is like you have your ways of doing things, and it's based off of, I'm assuming, how your mind works.
Exactly.
And it's interesting to kind of hear how you go about that. It's very like, I don't know. I wouldn't say like mathematical, but like very, I don't know the word I'm looking for. It's a super good word though, probably.
Good word.
Super good.
Super good.
Yeah.
Tasty word.
Tasty
words. Yeah, I don't know. It's, obviously it's kind of, negotiating the areas of subjectivity versus physical objectivity. Like if we're doing representational painting, we're dealing with optics. If we're trying to make things look real and stuff like that. But then it's like you want to, I think it's where you got like, how do you negotiate that, right? In making your own work? Because there is no more obligation to be a certain way in painting. Thank God, right? Great. I really like that idea. And so, and that's where the freedom is how you negotiate those things. At least that's how I think it is, And and the realization that like the technical part, it's diminishing returns to a certain extent. After you learn how to do form to a certain degree, it's almost good enough to convince the viewer enough. So it's like, how much better are you getting? How much better? You will always get better as long as you're painting too, and you're being conscious of like trying to get better. Like I'm still trying to work on color more. I'm reading Joseph Albers and whatnot, and like trying to really think about color combinations. I'm trying to include more of like Japanese color combinations because they're different philosophy completely altogether.
Really?
Yeah, and so like technical progression can also be an excuse to learn new things. Like I'm doing with the color too. It's like I'm using that as essentially as an excuse to read more about Joseph Albers and Japanese art color combinations. Yeah.
That's cool.
So I think that's where it's like, that whole we just talked about, like not looking at others or whatever, looking at I just like to use excuses to put more information into my head, essentially. Yeah. I think. Cool. I don't know. Yeah.
It's a good reason to use an excuse.
Yeah. I think because we can do anything with painting. It doesn't matter in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And so there is you're doing it wrong, really, actually.
Except for Jeff.
Except for this fictional Jeff.
Fucking Jeff. God. Every time. Nice. I don't know if you want to start going into like top 5. I don't know if it's even necessary. But did you?
Well, I guess we could just gather them up. I mean, you've kind of dropped the names all over the place on the podcast, but we could put them together in a little neat little bow.
Right now, I would say Degas number 1. And then number 2, in terms of just liking, I would just say I do like Hopper.
Verma
Hopper. Vermeer. Mondrian. Well, I should be more diverse. Well, it doesn't matter. Well, Demon Corn's a great one too. But yeah, Demon Corn's great. Yeah, Rothko's great. Everybody's great. Yeah, there's too many. There's way too many.
That's offensive what we're doing, actually.
Yeah. And it's kind of like, it's arbitrary. It's arbitrary in a lot of ways.
And you can even like add like architects, it sounds like, in your work.
Yeah.
It seems like a huge influence.
Movie makers, filmmakers. Yeah.
Like, have you guys seen the new Venom? I'm seeing.
Did you see it?
I didn't. I was just talking about great filmmakers.
The Maniac? The Netflix show by Kari Joji?
Oh, I want to watch it.
That was good.
Oh, it looks so good.
I'm a big fan of Kari Joji.
Don't tell me anything. Yeah. It looks really good.
Yeah, movies are good. I think that one's like the most, because, it's kind of the ubiquitous way people consume stories right now.
Yeah.
So
I think it's a
good
great
way
medium
to see how people are seeing or how people are doing things in terms of conveying stories.
Yeah, especially like outside of just actual script and things like that. Like there's that. Have you guys ever seen that Instagram account where they break down the palettes of movies?
Yeah.
What, using the Adobe thing?
I don't know, but they just have a image of a movie, and then they'll have like
still.
Like from like the darkest to
for
the
color
lightest.
grading stuff.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And it's just interesting to see that, just kind of like see the palettes of this scene and like what it might do for the feel of that movie and for the feel of that scene. And you're like, oh, that's interesting. Oh, that's cool. I don't know. It's just
it's intentional.
Yeah,
that's
for sure.
The thing, it's like movies. There's a lot of thought in it.
Oh yeah.
So it's like you kind of, in a way, you kind of can't use it as an excuse. When people misinterpret things, being like they're just misinterpreting, when there's so many opportunities to actually put things into a visual work,
right?
To direct that. Like movies, that's all it is. You're manipulating perspective of the audience and viewer, and there's so many effects. Like Hitchcock is like so good, master.
Heard of him before,
and so it's like. They can do it, and there's so many examples of it.
Hitchcock was the hot tub time machine guy.
I don't think I saw that on Time Machine, actually.
It's all right. You don't need to.
No, thanks. It's okay. Yeah, I don't know. There's so many examples that it's kind of like, I just feel like, yeah, it's there. It's not actually that hard to find examples, you know? And I think it's productive to see examples in a lot of ways. Yeah,
I think so.
Yeah. But there's always something you can bring. And that part is the part where it requires some arrogance to really bring what you really want to, you know, that part.
I agree.
You need to kind of be a little bit arrogant, because clearly all the great artists, they're pretty clear about what they wanted to do in some
real
way,
arrogant assholes as well.
I think arrogance is not a bad thing.
I don't think so either.
I'm pretty bad on that end. Like, yeah, I'm very opinionated.
How dare you?
You know, super opinionated, and just But
I think that's great.
I think, you know, it's just trying to be conscious about things.
I think so.
What are we doing?
Yeah.
Being conscious of that aspect. Yeah.
Consciousness in general is something to not waste.
Yeah. I mean, there are things that, you know, like we do things that we think we want, but it's not the same as what we actually want. You know, if we have a little, you know, if we can be aware of those things. I think paintings in general, what's all this, and then obviously I'm going to contradict myself, all this, even that is put into it. Paintings generally, even if you don't intend it, they show you a lot of things that are honest, and you can't actually hide it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things you can't hide in painting. Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
It's very true.
Yeah. So it's like, you can interpret that as like, oh, well, maybe I don't need to think about it because it'll just come out. But I don't know. I think it's all about balance to me.
Yeah.
It's about being conscious and controlling the balance. You know, it's not an all or nothing thing to me. It's not about any genre. It's not about any style. It's just trying to do what you really want, you know. And even for purely aesthetic reasons, I am an old school artist in the sense that I want to make pretty paintings. I'm not a contemporary artist, you know.
Yeah. How dare you?
Yeah, I'm pretty outdated. I'm a pretty outdated painter in a lot of sense. Yeah.
I think that's coming around. I don't think too many people are trying to make ugly things.
Well, no, there's like critiques of, you know, modern art. You know, you're critiquing that notion. That's one of the movements. You know, critiquing. You know, yeah. So it's like that's not the only way to do it, though. Yeah. There's many other ways. Yeah, to make art, definitely, and being open to those is also important, or acknowledging those. Yeah.
High-fiving them.
Yeah. Just knowing that they exist, actually.
I think so.
Yeah.
I totally agree.
Yeah. Critiquing beauty is actually pretty valid, because it's pretty valid, I would say. Because, But, I don't know. I think, like, this is all, like, I'm almost regurgitating what my teachers have taught me. And it's also...
Do you have their number?
This is free art school for Josh.
Who you tricked me, Sergio.
Art is a lineage. That too, you know. Yeah. We're not coming out of a vacuum. That's
kind of one of the things I was thinking about when you brought up the fan fiction thing. I was like, I don't know. There was the thing I didn't agree with it, just because I think it's almost true, but I think it's almost like we just naturally build on like art in general. I think just builds on top of those before you.
It's a progression.
Yeah, and you just continuously. You're not saying like I am. I mean, even I was earlier talking about how I'm like, I'm trying to like exercise the original thought part of my brain is but I'm not like trying to say I'm doing anything brand new with my art or anything like that. It's just and you know, we're traditional painters, so we're just building on what came before us and trying to, I think, infuse some form of what we consider our time in a weird way, you know, like capturing that feel of existing in this moment now.
Yeah. I mean, I have opinions about that in terms of like...
How dare you? You told us you weren't an opinionated person.
I have a very...
What? When did that change?
Because I think, you know...
When the mic got in front of it.
Exactly. I think, yeah, it's hard to say. You know, like, because there's so many parts to it. And so it's like, what part? The painting from life part? Or painting representationally? Or painting humans? Painting people?
Right.
Painting life. It's like there's so many parts within those, and it's
Are you talking about capturing existing now? Is that what you have the beef with? Is that what you mean?
No, it's more about like which topic are we considering lineage, and which topic are we considering recreations? You know, fan fictions, and because and that's the part where it's. Like I said, there's still a lot of opportunity of choice. Which one are you choosing to be recreations? Which one are you choosing as lineage or like continuations, right? Because like I personally consider William Coldstream and then the Uglow lineage of the Easton Road School as the painting from life, the most modern version or a pretty modern version of painting from life objective observation thing. And but it's different to the French Atelier thing. It's not that at all anymore. But I consider that lineage, progression, you know? And those aren't recreations, you know. But that's different to me using Vermeer's painting way of putting paintings and objects in there that are supposed to be part of narrative, you know, that I'm taking. It's not really changing it. I'm just taking it in a lot of ways. I'm just kind of taking some of that close tension thing. And then I'm also taking Hopper's way of setting up the figure. And then I'm also just taking like a lot of those pieces.
Right.
Which I'm not making a new version of how to paint from life or like that makes this really interesting painting. Like the way Coldstream's and Uglow's painting, you know, they're so unique in a different way because their process is a lineage that changed and morphed and then you got there. And it's not like anything before. Whereas my paintings it's not got anything with that. So that's really hard. Like what Uglow and Coldstream, you know, that lineage had made. And because they somehow figured out how to incorporate line into a mass thing. You know, paintings are generally mass. It's not line oriented. Drawings are line oriented and stuff. But like they figured out how to put a little bit of line in there. And I'm like, I want to figure out how to put a little bit of line. That's why I was kind of thinking about Coldstream a little bit. Is like, how do I figure out how to put line into paintings a little bit? It's hard. I don't know. I don't think it works.
Something similar out right now.
Yeah. Because line is a drawing thing. It's not a painting thing. We're doing masses, right? Oil paintings. We're massing in things.
Yeah.
That's next level. You know. Yeah, it's interesting. Because there's so many directions like that, right? Yeah. It's like, it's not really about new or original. It's like there's directions and potential.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's potential in a lot of areas.
Yeah.
And
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was doing before I started painting oil, I did mixed medium, and a lot of the stuff was like had some drawing in it, and I miss having that like ability to just put lines where I feel like putting them. But it doesn't come across the same way when I do it in paint. Right. It just is like it's a tricky problem to solve.
Yeah, because every medium has its kind of optimal thing. You know, like drawing, it's optimal for line. It's not optimal for creating texture or something, right?
Yeah.
It's different. Painting is optimal for conveying color and value, and you know, and photography is optimal for other things, and like video is optimal for. They're all different advantages, and then there's also disadvantages. So, really parsing that out and trying to use those well, because I think what I like about painting more than like let's say photography is because it's not accurate. You can be really, you know. Trying to be really good photoreal or whatever, but at the end of the day, it's actually not accurate.
Yeah.
Objectively, it's actually not inaccurate. And there's the hand, because it's not accurate. you get these squiggly lines. You don't get perfect lines.
Unless you got these hands right.
And then that's part of the device of painting, that makes painting.
Right.
And then, so, yeah. And watercolor, there's watercolor aspects to it that make it watercolor and make it irreplaceable.
Right. Yeah.
And so that's the part too, is like trying to finesse that too, while trying to do all these other things, and while trying to reference other things, and then trying to do your whatever idea that you have behind it. There's already so much.
It's too much.
Yeah, there's so much there. And so, yeah, I don't think we're lacking in choice in a lot of ways, even if we confine ourselves in a very specific area.
Yeah.
There's still a lot of choice.
I agree.
Feel. Yeah.
You got a David Choe question, I believe.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, basically, what would you do with the David Choe money if you had $200 million to do? I guess at this point, we expanded it to beyond art.
Oh, yeah. Probably just live normally, knowing that I don't have to make money. That's good enough for me. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not that big. Yeah.
What would living normally entail for you?
Waking up, going to the studio, come back.
Would your studio still be here? Maybe a little upgrade?
Maybe not. I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, doesn't matter. Really. Yeah. I think, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think, yeah. The one person that I'd actually like to add back into my top 5 thing.
Mm-hmm.
Top 6.
Living person.
Oh, shit.
Total genius.
Sergio.
Baron Story.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
That guy's a genius. Super criminally underrated in a way, actually, I feel. But yeah, I think he's actually a genius that's living, There aren't that many. And I think he's pretty... It's odd because he's actually not my taste. Like the way his aesthetic, it's not my taste, but he's a genius. Come on. It's like, oh, yeah.
Do you know him personally or?
No, actually, Adam, he was,
yeah. He was
and
Adam's
so
teacher.
it's like very tangentially, and like my mentor, he was, he was teaching at the academy for a little bit or something, and he kind of got to know him too a little bit. So it's like, I know him like but it's like, as you just look at what he does, and nobody can do that. It's not possible. Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. Mentorship in a way, I guess. I'm big on that, like following.
How'd you find your mentor?
Well, I just co-opted him as my mentor.
Oh.
He would probably be like, yeah, what are you talking about? But he's like a teacher at the academy, but
okay.
Yeah. Tomutsu.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know Tomutsu.
Yeah. Because, that guy, he's also, like, there's actually...
Top 7.
At the academy, there's actually a couple painters that are, like, really good. But you just they don't really do shows or anything either, but like they're just teaching, so you don't get to see that.
Yeah, he went full on teacher route.
Yeah, he's
much.
like, I don't want to do the art gallery stuff at all. But the way he paints, it's pretty unique. Next level stuff, because he's like connecting lines in ways that's like, what? With a paintbrush, and there's a lot I learned from him. And a lot of like Japanese art information that I got from him too, which is it's pretty strongly associated with, because I grew up overseas, I was born in Japan. I grew up in Tanzania, East Africa.
Oh, wow.
From about 3 to like 14. And so it's like my idea of, I didn't grow up in Japan. So it's like my sense of like culture is actually a little bit, it's not clear. So like I use an example of like thinking about Japanese culture is like, for me, it's like trying to read a book underwater. It's like this blurry, but it's there and it's physical. You're looking at it. And then the ideas of like Western culture or like African culture that I grew up in, that I was brought up in, is like a hologram. It's just a projection, but it's not physically there, And then so it's like, I'm not really that like super Japanese. But then it's like, I get a lot of things about it. And then there's like a lot of things I understand about Western culture, but I'm like, totally don't agree with or like don't really.
Mm-hmm.
It's not part of me. And so it's like, being grown up in that way, it's like these things about duality or like one or the other is like not really a thing that exists in my head that much. It's kind of just, I can see how things don't apply because there's cultural diversity. Is just, there's one thing you can think of that you think is the norm, and then in another culture, it's like completely the opposite.
Right.
And that actually really does exist. Mm-hmm. So if just knowing that actually physically exists, like everything you think is a norm in somewhere else is completely the opposite.
Mm-hmm. And that
just
culture
breaks
can
down
exist perfectly fine.
Yeah, and it functions for like thousands of years and whatnot. And it's like any notions of like being dogmatic about something it just kind of goes out the window. It doesn't feel real, you know? And with art too, it's like I mainly been focused around in terms of education, Western art. But Eastern art is like a completely different thing. Mm-hmm. The ideas of what a picture plane is, composite, you know, it completely different. And so it's that part I think is like, I probably should try and learn more and try and incorporate a little bit into what I'm doing, which is essentially Western art stuff, right?
Well, it sounds like you already are kind of dipping your toe into it.
Yeah. I don't know. It's really difficult because it's cultural, philosophical, which is the big part. That's completely a different thing, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Culture in general is a weird subject as well.
Yeah.
Because it's like, you know, it's like almost like a man-made thing that you can dive deep into or decide not to. Like, you know, I grew up I'm half white, half Pacific Islander. And the Pacific Islander culture, I grew up with all my Pacific Islander family, but I was always considered a half white, half Tongan kid, even to like my Tongan family. So it's always like this weird, I've got like 1 foot in, 1 foot out of that culture. I understand it. And I've also grown up. So, you know, if I did something weird to them, they would say, oh, that's your white side.
Exactly.
You know, and you go like, that's weird. Like, I mean, you know, I don't know. Culture's a weird thing in general.
And I mean, it's real at the same time.
Yeah.
You know, and
sure.
like,
it's man-made, but so is cars.
But it's like money. We all agree that it exists, and therefore it works, and it's real, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's like, culture is essentially like an OS of a computer. Mm. It's the Windows. You're running Windows on that computer, right? And then another person's running Mac or something. What?
I'm just kidding. Just trying to be fake mad at Mac.
But yeah, so it's like, it's interesting because it colors a lot of things. It's not everything. Because I say that it's different, but then at the same time, what I notice when, you know, different cultures is there's also a lot of things that are exactly the same.
Right.
We all react exactly the same in a lot of things. You know, it's very nuanced in that sense. We all feel certain things as equally too. And so,
and girls all have cooties, no matter what culture you grew up in.
But yeah, so it's like, it just, painting, I think, like Western art, it's like going back to like audiences and stuff. It's like, there is also this already bigger premise that if we're in the West, it's a Western audience and they're seeing it from Western perspective of art aesthetics, right? So there's a lot of things in that sense already where it's like, it doesn't really apply if I was to put Eastern philosophy or whatever aesthetics into a painting and then try and show it here. There's actually a lot of things that will obviously go over their heads or not recognize.
Right.
It's totally different because like in Japan, it's like oil painting is a new thing. It doesn't actually really exist as like an old cultural thing. Mm-hmm. So it's completely different to here, where it's like anybody can almost make a painting. You know, you can just go do it. But in Japan, it's like you can't do that. And then there's also the East, you know, the traditional arts, and it's separated. And because the ideas of like oil painting came a lot later, so it's more already like the starting point in Japan of Western art is avant-garde art. So that's their starting point. But where it's like, you know, the West, it's like thousands of years ago is oil painting. There's like a long lineage. But in Japanese culture, it's like Western art starts from avant-garde. So that's like completely different.
Wow.
Yeah. You're not even going to French Atelier thing, whatever. It's like, no, that doesn't exist. Right. You know, it's kind of a generalization to say it doesn't exist, but it's a different perspective. But then you have the traditional Japanese art that's been going on forever. Mm-hmm. And then that way of thinking is also like completely different. Japanese philosophy about beauty is completely different, you know. And it's kind of like, there's obviously things that I like about some things there that I'm picking from. And yeah, like, I don't like paintings that are perfect. That's a very Japanese cultural thing. It's very, like, you know,
the pursuit for perfection and everything you do.
It's always the most beautiful is like the moon that's almost going to be a full moon, but it's not a full moon. Full moon is perfect, and that's not the most beautiful kind of thing, and it's fleeting. It's all tied to nature. So it's all tied to like seasons, you know, things are coming. Nothing's permanent. That's another thing. That's a big one. Imperfection is another big one. But it's the intention to be perfect is like important. You know, so it's like a plant growing. It's trying to become something like that. It's all like associated to nature. So if anything about Asian stuff is like, it's all nature at the end of the day. You can make it all this woo-woo stuff, but it's like, no, it's just we're just talking about nature and seasons.
What about Sailor Moon?
So like, if we're going about like pop culture, why there's so many teen stories, there's that wabi-sabi thing, right? That's like the not perfect or whatever.
Oh, right. Yeah.
But what most people forget is that it comes tied together with the idea of shun. Shun is like youth. And something full of potential becoming something. That's why there's a lot of like, you know, like Miyazaki and all those. It's all young people, like kids. Because that's important.
That's interesting.
It's not. I don't know if innocence
My
is
wife's
exactly the correct translation. It's not a correct translation, but you notice, like, you know, like with like Miyazaki stuff, it's like it's the young character, and then the old people are like, they're kind of not the smartest people, or the best people.
You said it.
They have like bad intentions, or they're jaded in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Because it's got that shun thing where it's like youth should be admired in a lot of ways, kind of thing. Because it's full of potential.
Right. Oh, that's interesting.
Because and that's like a plant, you know. So it's all nature, anyways.
Wow.
But yeah, so like if you look at anime, they do that a lot. It gets a little weird because it's, you know, and Japan, like, to explain Japanese culture, you're almost always going to get it wrong anyways. Because it's a contradiction of like mixes of like traditional Japanese, Zen Shinto, and then like Americanization.
USA.
It's all like it's like put in together inconsistently, and it's compartmentalized. So it's got a lot of contradictions.
It seems super simple and not complicated.
But yeah, so like when you look at the Japanese comic stuff, it's actually pretty obvious when you see it.
Yeah, for sure.
If you know that, it's like, oh, it's just that stuff. Yeah.
That's cool. I like that.
Yeah.
I think we have one last question. If you had a superpower, would it be invisible or flight?
Flying, I guess.
Big mistake.
Don't care.
Big mistake.
You know about the Ring of Gaijus, right?
No.
Okay, so was it Plato? Maybe it was Plato. But it's about invisibility, and it's about morality. It's about, like, you know, he gets this ring where you turn it inward and you can be invisible.
Okay.
And you turn it outward, you become visible again.
Oh, that's Frodo. I'm just
Actually, it's probably taken from that, but whatever. Yeah. But it's essentially about morals. Like, is morals only there because other people are there to punish you, kind of thing, you know? But essentially, if you could be invisible, nobody can, you know.
Yeah.
So would you be moral? And then it becomes this whole thing about this story about this guy who gets the ring. He can be invisible. He essentially becomes a king. You know, you're super powerful, but you can do it without any morals, essentially.
That's what I was trying to see, if you were dark. Yeah, that's why I was disappointed with your flight answer.
But that thing is like...
Every time anyone says invisible, I'm like, welcome to the dark side.
Yeah. That's where it's like...
You converted me from flight to invisibility.
Yeah. That invisibility thing is like, it actually doesn't do a lot.
Oh, it does. It does everything.
No, because you're going to just nobody's going to know you exist.
Except for someone's probably just going to hit you with their car and you're going to die.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nobody knows you exist.
No, but you can like reappear. You're not invisible forever. Like you turn invisible, do something.
And then it's going to be like some cat that, that movie Cashback? Was it Cashback?
Cashback? Oh, where you can freeze time?
Yeah, that guy freezes time. It's going to be like that, right? Yeah. Don't care. Don't care that much. Yeah.
That'd be a good power. Freeze time. Maybe not. Would you age? That's the real question.
What?
If you could freeze time, would you still age?
Yeah.
Like, because you're still like existing.
Time is relative. So you'd get older.
Yeah, never mind. Not a good power. You like unfreeze and everyone's like, why are you 30 years old here? You're like, but look at my art. I'm 30 years better. Like, it's still weird.
They don't even know who you are. They're like, who's this person? Yeah, that's weird. Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. Well, we've pretty much hit the time, 2 hours.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah.
If anyone wants to find your artwork, they could find it on... Do you have a website? Sorry.
Yeah, I got a website and Instagram. I guess Facebook. Yeah.
What's the URL to your website?
HiroshiSatoArt.com.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And then we'll shout you out on the... so people can find you. And
Instagram and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. That's the same as Hiroshi Sato Art.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
On everything?
Yeah. Twitter too, I think.
Hell yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, this has been super fun, man.
Oh,
I really enjoyed
great
this.
Conversation. Yeah.
I saved myself some money, I guess, on art school is what I hear.
Yeah,
that's cool.
like
and then,
Hiroshi could be your mentor now.
well, I've already told everyone he is.
Yeah.
So it works out perfect. Yeah. I really appreciate this.
Yeah.
It's really
for doing
cool.
this too.
So this has been Waiting Dry. Jeff, if you're still listening, fuck off.
Fuck off, Jeff. With your Jeffness.